Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2022 One Sustainability Conference, our annual global sustainability event. We now have the pleasure to welcome Irina Gerry, CMO at Change Food at One Sustainability. Irina will tell us about sustainable food revolution, biggest challenge, technological breakthroughs, and investment opportunities. Irina, thank you so much and welcome to One Sustainability.
Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate it. I am super excited to be here with everybody today. All right, so welcome everyone. Today, we're going to talk about food. And I know we're at the Sustainability Summit, but hang with me because I'm going to tell you why those two are connected. Growing up, I always thought of food as just something so central to our lives. It was part of family gatherings, spending time with friends. It was always for enjoyment, for pleasure, and food was everywhere, and it was ubiquitous to our lives and how we defined ourselves. And yet, for me, food really took on a different meaning about 10 years ago when I started learning a lot more about how food is made, the nutrition aspects of it, the health aspects of it, and now the planetary aspects of it. So in this talk today, I wanted to cover three different things. First, I wanted to share a little bit of what I learned about food and the food systems and what that means from a planetary perspective. I want to share with you a little bit about some really exciting technologies that are coming to market soon and things you can either invest in or work on. And of course, I'll leave you with some tips at the end of how you can get involved and help kind of usher in this new era of sustainable food. Before we begin, just a brief introduction. My name is Irina Gerry. I have been working in and around food for a better part of the decade. I come from consumer marketing background with some of the better known companies in the world of food. And 2 years ago, I switched over from kind of the traditional food marketing universe to a startup company called Change Foods. And we are one of the companies working on the new technologies that are really exciting and promising that I will talk to you about. In our case, we're creating dairy entirely without animals. So let's dive in. As many of you know, we have about 8 billion people on this planet today. What do you think it takes to supply food for 8 billion people? How much water, how much land of our entire planet do you think this requires? I'm going to share some interesting and disturbing statistics that may not necessarily be top of mind for many of you today. So the way we produce food today is actually quite significant. Our global food production systems account for just over a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions. We use 50%, that is half, of all ice-free land on this planet to grow food. And we use a lot of water to do it. 70% of our freshwater resources are dedicated to agriculture. And that does have significant impact. 78% of fresh and ocean pollution is actually driven by agriculture as well. And here's the most disturbing statistic. We are now undergoing what scientists are calling the 6th extinction of wildlife on this planet. We are losing species by the hundreds annually. And at this point, as we sit today, about 94% of global biomass, so this is if we add all of the land animals on the planet, 94% of them are made up of humans and the animals we farm to feed ourselves, leaving only 6% to wildlife. That is quite disturbing. But we've got to eat, right? So what are we going to do? Well, let's look at it. The biggest problem in the way we feed ourselves is actually raising livestock for food. And it's taking a massive amount of resources to do so. At this moment, 77% of all agricultural land is dedicated to either grazing animals or growing crops to feed them. This is the size of North and South America combined. So a third of our planet is entirely dedicated to raising just a handful of species for food. Meanwhile, they only supply just 18% of calories. There's a massive disconnect there. And in the US, the situation is not a whole lot different. We in the United States are currently using 41% of our entire continental landmass for grazing land and cropland to feed the animals. In fact, we use 65% more cropland to feed the animals we farm than we do for humans. 4% of this land is used to feed the humans or grow the food we eat directly, such as fruits and vegetables. And again, that is an incredible number. When I started learning these statistics, they absolutely blew my mind, because a lot of the time you hear in the media and sometimes in social sphere that, well, the animals, they just eat the grass. But in reality, we feed and use so much of our productive cropland to feed the animals that it is no longer a simple story. If you zoom out globally, 1/3 of global cropland is actually used to feed livestock. This is exclusive of the grass. And today, animal agriculture, and specifically cattle grazing, is the leading driver of tropical deforestation in the Amazon. And in the meantime, just livestock is producing 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. This is a sustainability conference, so this is an important point to think about the amount of emissions that are coming from the food systems, and particularly from livestock. And methane, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is an incredibly powerful greenhouse gas. It is 84 times more powerful at warming the planet on the 20-year time horizon. And it is contributed to in large part by the animal agriculture. So livestock is actually contributing about as much as oil and gas sector to the global methane emissions. So when we think about food and when we think about sustainability and emissions, it would not be possible for us to achieve the sustainability objectives and get to the Paris Agreement of plus 1.5 degrees Celsius unless we address agriculture and specifically livestock farming. Here's another last, I promise, disappointing part of the story is, despite all of this information, we continue to grow more and more animals for food. In the last 50 years, global meat production increased fivefold, and milk production is on the rise, and it's over double. Because we have a growing population, because we have a rising middle class in developing countries, the appetite for animal products is increasing. Now, put this back together with the fact that we are already using 1/3 of this planet to farm animals. It is clear to see that we are on a collision course with nature. The way we farm and produce food for ourselves, specifically animal food, is simply incompatible with a sustainable future on this planet. So let's see, what do we do? Most experts globally agree, including the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, that we must reduce animal product consumption. It will have tremendous benefits for our planet. It will allow us to return a lot of this land to nature. That means rewilding, that means reforestation, that means carbon sequestration. We will be able to use a lot more of our productive cropland to use for feeding humans directly. If you put this in the context of global hunger, this is incredibly powerful to be able to feed more people using less land and less resources if we just shift our consumption pattern. This will do a lot for our methane emissions because majority of those are driven by animal agriculture, and our water, both from a pollution perspective, but also from purely availability perspective. As we sit here today, water is coming front and center to the global stage as a resource that is becoming in short supply everywhere in the world. And dedicating 70% of that to agriculture, again, is problematic given the fact that we now have shortages across multiple regions in the world. So what are we gonna do? Because people love to eat meat. We have been together with meat consumption across most parts of the world for millennia. This is part of our culture. This is part of our identity. And when we talk to folks about meat reduction or not eating meat, this gets very emotional. And, you know, I'm in the United States right now, and this topic is very, very important to address because, again, we love meat. It's part of our lives. It's part of our culture, but we have to do something. We could not go on with the status quo. So good news is we have some solutions, right? We have a solution toolkit. So what could we do? Obviously, we could eat more plants. It doesn't mean we all go vegan. It just means a global shift towards a more plant-centric diet. Again, this has been recommended by leading authorities in the world as healthy, sustainable, and more equitable food system. We do have plant-based options such as milk alternatives and meat alternatives that are already in market today and are being embraced by consumers throughout the world. And there's definitely great reasons to continue to do that. There are also initiatives to improve the efficiency of animal agriculture, meaning could we produce more animals with or more animal food with less land, less resource, et cetera. There's some initiatives underway as well, but given the inherent biology and inefficiencies of that system, those solutions are limited. And of course, transitioning to more regenerative agriculture is another solution where we farm differently, we farm animals differently. And those, again, are wonderful solutions. However, they require a much lower density of production, meaning we could not produce as much animal products as we do in traditional intensive systems, which means a reduction is again necessary. And of course, the last, and this is what I want to talk to you about today, is we actually have some really exciting technologies coming to market that will allow us to make animal products without the animals. So let's dig in as to what that means. Today, we are on the cusp of the fastest, deepest, most consequential disruption of agriculture in human history. Sounds exciting, right? So what are these technologies? There are three major pillars of these new food technology that is coming to us. First is cellular agriculture. Second is precision fermentation. And third is biomass fermentation. So let's walk through those one at a time. Cellular agriculture involves taking a tiny sample of cells from a live animal, think of it as a small biopsy, taking those cells and growing them in a bioreactor, in a nutrient broth, which will allow cells to naturally multiply and grow, much like they do inside of an animal, but happening entirely without the animal, without the need for land, for as much water, for as much input, and only growing the parts that we want to eat. There are a number of companies in this space that are working on cuts of meat, that are working on cuts of fish. And the exciting part of this technology is that these are meat, these are fish. They are not a plant-based replica. They are exact same cells that have the exact same nutrition and the exact same taste profile. A lot of these companies are currently pending regulatory approval, with one exception of Good Meat, which has regulatory approval in Singapore and is available for sale. We do anticipate a lot of the US regulatory approvals to come online as well. So very soon you would actually be able to sample these products and see for yourself. Second category of technology is called precision fermentation. This is a fundamentally different approach where instead of growing whole cells, we're actually using microorganisms to act as tiny factories. So if you think of a cow as a macroorganism that takes on inputs such as grass and crops and produces milk, you can take microbes, feed them nutrients, and have them produce a protein of interest. So in case of Impossible Foods, heme protein is produced through fermentation. In case of Perfect Day, milk protein whey is produced through fermentation, which allows for that to become part of a delicious ice cream or a yogurt. And in case of Change Foods, we're making casein proteins, which allow us to create real dairy cheese that stretches, melts, and does everything you would want cheese to do, all made entirely without the animal. And the last third bucket of technology is called biomass fermentation. If you think about plants, animals, there's a third category, it's called fungi. And this is based on fungi kind of kingdom. And we are using mycelium, which is the root system of what you would think of a mushroom in the forest. It's not a mushroom, it's actually a root system of microorganisms called fungi. And they can also be fermented in bioreactors and produce incredibly high quality protein with fiber, with vitamin B12. The nutrition profile on biomass fermentation is absolutely incredible. And it can be formulated to be a sausage, a chicken, a bacon, or anything else, again, made entirely without animals and supplying the necessary protein. This is a business conference, right? So let's briefly talk about the money. What does this all mean? This sounds exciting. Can I make money on this? Yes. To date, $12 billion has been invested in these different technologies. And you're seeing the inflow of capital rather rapidly accelerating over the past year. So just in the last year alone, $5 billion have come into the space. And as you see here, there are some eye-popping funding rounds happening in this space. So this is incredibly exciting. Investors are seeing the disruption potential and the future growth potential of these industries. And this is definitely something to watch as you think about the future. And for the impact-minded of you, what does it mean, right? If we scale this technology, well, if we just get to 8% market share of meat products produced with these alternative technologies, it is actually equivalent to 0.85 gigatons of CO2 equivalence reduction. The cool thing about this is it's about the same as decarbonizing 95% of the aviation sector. So we can all stop flying by 2030, or we can just produce 8% of the meat with these novel technologies. It shows you the potential, it shows you the impact, and it shows you that, in my mind, this is a much more palatable choice when you think of decarbonization and the impact that this could have. And when you think about deploying capital, again, this is for the investors in the room, the impact return on capital employed in plant-based or alternative protein sector is actually 3 times greater than any other abatement investment technology available to us. So on this page, we have cement, we have chemicals, we have aviation, we have shipping, etc. And the impact you could have in these investments is actually significantly better by looking at food technologies. So how do you get involved, right? There's 3 things that you could do starting today. Obviously, learn more. I just shared a tiny fraction of the information that's out there. Good Food Institute, Rethink X Report, Our World in Data, United Nations Food and Agriculture organizations have a lot more information out there about food systems, food technologies, options, investment opportunities. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I also have a column on Green Queen where I share a lot of this kind of exciting stuff and new incoming technologies. Second thing you can do is get involved, dive in. There are more than 200 startups that are hiring. So if you get excited by this and you want to be a part of building this exciting future, there are jobs out there that you can jump in and start doing today. There are jobs across the major consulting companies that are developing deep competencies in this category. There are dedicated venture capital funds that focus their investments entirely on food technology. And obviously, there are large food manufacturers and ingredient companies that are also part of this ecosystem. So if you're either working with or at one of these companies, there are absolutely opportunities to roll up your sleeves and be part of this exciting future. And the last thing, even if you're not going to do any of these things, you can always be a climate hero for breakfast. Now that you understand the incredible impact that food choices have on our planet, you could make those 3 times a day. It doesn't have to be every single meal. You can pick 1 meal, you can pick 2 meals. And I feel like by combining our personal power with the power of business and the power of investment, we can create an incredible future. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Alex, if there are any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Thanks, Irina. Thanks so much for joining One Sustainability event. Looking forward to hear from you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.